What revenge of yours hit the victim way worse than you thought it would, to the point you said maybe I shouldn't have done that? When I was in 9th grade, a kid ruthlessly bullied me for a few months. I had gotten sick of it and devised a plan for revenge. Every Wednesday we would get to sit outside for quiet reading time, and this kid would always go back inside for a piss. I had left and waited in the bathroom for him, peeking under the stall for his shoes to appear. He came in the bathroom, took his piss, then played on his Gamma Boy for the rest of reading time. The bell rang, and he walked out to the crowded stairwell still looking down at his Gamma Boy. I bumped into him. He fell face first down the stairs, knocked out 4 front teeth. Everyone on the stairs assumed he fell because he was playing his Gamma Boy. I feel pretty bad about it. Edit. I identified him by his shoes, used the bathroom as a place to pick up his trail. The bathroom he used was on the 2nd floor. Since it was the closest one to the door near where we were at outside, I knew he would have to use a set of stairs to go back down to his next class, one we had together, but I didn't know which one. Had a roommate who basically let his new GF move into our house in college. She helped herself to everything in the house but never contributed. Finally she parked in my parking spot, and that was my breaking point. I let all the air out of all of her tires, thinking she'd just air them back up and it would be an inconvenience. Instead she ended up buying all new tires. Whoops. Never came clean about it. I'm still mad at myself for this. When I was a preteen, my friend and I went to one of those day camps that picked us up in yellow school buses. One of the other kids on our bus was a younger boy I refer to as Ellie. Ellie was a fucking terror. He would scream and spit and hump things, make a mess, and be as annoying and insufferable as possible. Riding the bus with him was a nightmare for everyone involved most of the time. So I came up with this idea. I found his family in the phone book and called up pretending to be a camp counselor. I told his mom that he was misbehaving on the bus and that he would either be disciplined or kicked out of the camp if he didn't stop. She bought it, said she would talk to him about it. I felt so fucking smart. Until the next day, when a quiet, sullen Ellie showed up with a black eye. Kawalker and I had a friendly prank war spanning 2 years. Close to the end of our war he iced my car. Icing involves taking the hose to the parking lot every half hour and spraying a light mist over your victim's car when it's below 0 out. I finished my 12-hour shift to find the car encased in 2 inches of ice. My revenge was, I thought, both more inconvenient for him and less freezing my balls off for me. I decided to take a bedsheet, drape it over his car, and only took 4 or 5 trips out with the hose the next night. So the next morning he finds his car with a 1/4 inch of ice freezing a sheet to his car. When he started peeling off the sheet he pulled his windshield wipers, arms and all off of his ratty Jeep. I got a very pissed off phone call. I felt bad. The unwritten rule was embarrassing or inconvenient. No damage. I paid for repairs, and he got his revenge. He planted a dozen pieces of smoked herring throughout my car. Took me 6 months to find the last piece, hidden under the carpet under the back window of my car. I can still smell it. I don't even own the car anymore. When I was little my friends kept pointing at the little girl on the box of the board game Operation and saying it looks like me. So I pointed at the big fat guy and said that's your mom, and didn't realize she was behind me. My older brother was always quite horrible to me as a child and my parents never really did much about it. He was also much bigger than me, so I couldn't retaliate in a physical way cause I would be swiftly crippled cross-faced / walls of Jerichard. One day I had just had enough. My revenge? He had been playing Rome Total War for a good 6 hours a day for about 3 weeks. I started a new game and overwrote his save file. Never seen fury like it. I regretted it at the time. Cause he was so angry it scared me and it made him dislike me even more, but now I praise my 13-year-old self for hitting him where it clearly hurt most. I think I have told this before, but I think I was 15 and was in class and sat next to a friend of mine. He, for no reason, began to say, "Haha, your bald father," which I followed up with, "Haha, your bald mother." He started crying and ran to the teacher. I honestly forgot his mom had cancer and was getting chemo. This one is not as serious or entertaining as most of the answers you'll find here, but when we were kids, my sister threw water at me and ran away, so I picked up my glass of water and ran after her. I threw the water from the glass at her once I had her cornered. Unfortunately the glass had slipped out of my hand and it hit her right across her face. She got bruised and cut pretty bad. Yikes. When my friends and I were young, middle school or elementary age, there was this pair of sisters in our class. They were the epitome of a teacher's pet, helped because their mother was the assistant teacher, and whenever the teachers would leave they would snitch on everyone. Sometimes if they didn't like you, they would make shit up, and you would get in trouble still. My friends and I were quite annoying, so we obviously got blamed for shit that we didn't do. No matter what we did we were never believed in our innocence. So we did the logical thing of talking to every other student in the class and they shared our opinion of how much we all didn't like these girls. Everybody was fed up with their shit. So we wrote a paper stating the shitty things these girls were doing and how everyone didn't like them and so on. We then got about 90% of our classmates to sign this paper. Then we gave it to the principal. I'm not 100% sure what happened next, but I do remember the principal coming into our class after recess and she began to ask if this paper was true and so forth, and everyone who signed it agreed. A few days later these girls were kicked out of school, or maybe they left due to humiliation / parents decided to pull them from the school. Their mother was still the assistant teacher and she was crying about the whole thing, and she was saying things about how we are horrible and how could we lie about her angels. I felt a bit bad, but I was quite happy that those girls were no longer there because they were mean and massive liars. A roommate poured water on me while I was asleep, so I filled all his shoes and the pockets of all his trousers with chili powder. I didn't realize the powder had dye in, and it stained everything red, including any shirts he had tucked into work trousers and a lot of items he washed with them. Had a big group of friends from 13 to 18. When we were 17, one of them stole my girlfriend. To be fair, he legitimately knew we were going out. He got her drunk and shagged her at a party. He knew I'd find out. Said to my face he didn't care. Tough shit, mate. It was her fault as well, of course. She wasn't passed out or anything like that. She'd been leading him on and was sober enough to consent, if drunk enough to get over the social stigma of actually doing it. So from that point on, our group of friends just cut this guy out of our circle. We stopped inviting him to stuff. If he tried to hang out, we told him to piss off. Mates that had been friends with him since primary school just ignored him. Initially, I was super proud of this show of solidarity from my brothers. My best mate was actually dating my now ex-girlfriend's best mate, and he split up with her because of her attitude about the whole thing, trying to defend her friend to him and make him hang out with them as a foursome. So, first summer back from uni, we are all 19 to 20. We see him in a local pub. I don't know what to do, decide to try and be cool about it and go up to say hi. He tells me to fuck off. I guess he blames me for all his friends cutting him out of his life. I don't get the chance to explain that I in no way asked them to do that. They just did what they saw as the right thing. 2 weeks later, we are in the same pub and I see his younger sister. She's 17 now, very, very attractive. I start a conversation with her about her brother and how I feel bad about what we did. She says that it did really hurt him, but he's got some new friends now, mostly from uni, and is still with my ex, despite a long distance relationship over the uni semesters. He won't talk to any of us old friends though, which I think is a genuine shame. He's known some of the guys since we were 5. One drink leads to another with this girl, and we end up back at her house. Her parents are away. Her brother is staying at my ex's flat. She has her own flat, didn't go to uni, got a job, so empty house. We end up shagging. Next morning, her bro calls round just as I'm leaving. The look on his face as he works out what's happened. He goes from utter despair to absolutely mental in about half a second. Eventually I just had to leave. His sister finally managed to explain to him that it was nothing to do with revenge or anything, and that I was genuinely sorry for how we treated him. I don't know if she told him the whole conversation we had about how I'd feel bad as I didn't want to upset him anymore, and she convinced me to come back to hers by saying she was her own woman, could make her own decisions, and he wasn't due to be home at any time. If he hadn't have randomly turned up, I hope he'd have never known. He still won't accept my Facebook friend request though. I guess revenge implies thinking out the act or some time between acts. But at the age of 14 I was rolling up the hose in my backyard with a friend, since my mother told me to. The two girls next door were playing in their backyard and come over to talk. One 12 or so, the other 7. The 12-year-old happened to be standing on the hose and I asked her to move. She did not. I pulled the hose hard enough to make her fall over. At this point the 7-year-old screamed bloody murder and ran right at me and bit my right on the stomach. She was not letting go and I could see blood starting to stain my shirt. I grabbed her head and tried to pull her away, but nothing. So I just full on punched her right in her eye. I was / am not proud of this, but it had to be done. What was worse is that the house was owned by a local church where I happened to go to Boy Scouts. Everyone quickly knew I had punched a 7-year-old and given her a black eye, but no one cared why. When I was a kid I was at a local river, a great swimming spot lots of people came to. My friend pushes me in the river and naturally I came up spluttering and a little red in the face, but it was all in good fun. For the rest of the day I planned to get her back, waiting for my opportunity to push her in, until she was at the edge of the river drying off. I pushed her, but her flailing and the slippery nature of the rocks she was on made her slip on the spot, and instead of just splashing into the water, she landed on her back hitting the rocks hard, and then fell into the water. She was winded, but thankfully otherwise unharmed. Our parents were furious at me, and I just spent the few seconds it took to get her out. Felt like a lot longer to me, just hoping I hadn't broken her back or something. 2/10 revenge. Would not do again. I was 11, my older brother was 16. We would fight and argue, but one time I was running up the stairs away from him, and he whipped the back of my legs with a long rubber chew toy. It left a pretty big figure-8 shaped welt on my legs. I knew he was faster and stronger than me, and I knew if I tried to attack him he'd stop me. So, I grabbed a flathead screwdriver and held it over the stove until it was red hot. I ran up to him and very openly went to stab him, knowing he'd stop me. He grabbed my wrist to stop my thrust, as anticipated, and I pushed the red hot head of it into his forearm as hard as I could. Man, I was a crazy asshole as a kid. Sorry, Mike. I was dating this girl and my friend saw her around town a few times and humiliated her in an effort to embarrass me. I told him to stop bothering her, but he did it again. That night I convinced him to try getting back together with his wildly insane and manipulative ex that he hadn't spoken to in years, thinking that he would just humiliate himself by trying. Well, they banged and got back together for a while.